It's 4:30 in the afternoon and the heat index is 104 degrees. Gotta love that global warming.
Hey, poor! Hey, poor! Hey, poor! You don't have to be poor anymore! Jesus is here!
Quite an experience to live in fear, isn't it? That's what it is to be a slave.
Man, you are one twisted fuck. Nope. I'm just an ordinary guy with nothing to lose.
Greetings, fellow worker slaves, podcasting at 128 kilobits from the Fortress of Squalitude. This is the Atheist in the Trailer Park podcast. I'm your host, Tucker. Professor Fuzznuts is curled up asleep in my seat, a little shithead, so I'm having to stand and record this. Buttons is curled up on the couch, just looking at me because I'm crazy. Yes, it's a podcast hosted by a guy and his cats. Get over it. And this is my wrap-up of Secular Saturday. I had originally planned to do this next week when the regular episode comes out, and I said, nope, every one of these things I've been to, as soon as I've gotten home, I've done an episode telling everybody what it was like. It's not fair, considering how much fun I had at Secular Saturday, for me not to do the same. Because the people involved in putting together Secular Saturday really busted their ass. They did an amazing job because normally folks spend a year planning something like this. These guys did it in 4 months. Now, it didn't come off perfectly. There were some last-minute guest cancellations and a few other minor issues, but all told, it was better than any of us expected it would be, and that's not a slight on the people involved, because they did an amazing job, and considering they've decided to start planning next year's Secular Saturday now, I can only imagine how good next year's is going to be. Ought to be awesome. So, let me start with at the beginning, more or less. Not really, but close enough. 2 weeks ago, okay, I got a message from Brian from Scenic City Skeptics podcast. And he messaged it was a group message to all of us who were either organizers or going to be speaking at Secular Saturday. And he said, okay, folks, this is what I want to do. I want to propose to Lexi, his co-host on Scenic City Skeptics, at a dinner the night before Secular Saturday. And we're all like, okay. And he goes, but we got to keep it a secret. I want to do it at this restaurant. And one of you has to propose the idea of us eating at this restaurant, because if I say, let's go to this restaurant, Lexi will know something's up. So if it comes from one of you guys, she will never suspect that I'm planning on proposing to her. So all of us work it out and make it so it seems rational or logical that we all pick this one restaurant. And the restaurant was called Back In Cafe, and they don't have a website apparently, because we couldn't really find anything, and we found a menu, but the menu was not accurate, and the menu we found online, not necessarily appealing. It didn't look like it was awful food, but it looked expensive, and you know, it was like, well, there's a couple of things on here that it looked like I would want to eat. So we went in with some of us went in with a kind of a down expectation. It's a beautiful restaurant. It's a converted mansion on the riverfront in Chattanooga. And the food is actually very, very good. I will not complain about that. And seeing what people got to eat, everything, it actually does, it is worth the cost. So I'll give them that. I mean, I didn't eat a lot. I got a flatbread pizza with, and this is going to sound horrific to some people, but it had goat cheese, mozzarella, duck, and some kind of green on it. Arugula? No, I don't think it was arugula. I don't remember. Anyways, that was really tasty. Other people got steaks that were delicious looking. Nobody left their plate left food on their plate. I'll tell you that. Everybody cleaned their plates and was really, really happy with the meal. We're there, and if you go to my personal Facebook page, you can find where I live streamed Brian proposing to Lexi. Brian shared it, so if you're friends with him on Facebook, you can find it easy enough. And I'm sure other people have shared it. But, it was a beautiful thing, and Lexi was all in tears and shocked and kind of upset that everybody but her was in on it. The one thing I remember is, Lexi was just stunned, and she was like, "How, you're all in on it?" And Jen from Not Another Atheist Podcast is like, "I'm in a fucking dress. You should have known something was up when you saw me in a fucking dress. I never wear dresses." We had our dinner, and then Chris from the Podunk Polymath Podcast and I, and a bunch of others who I know their names, but I don't know how cool they'd be with me giving them out, so I won't mention them. All went back to Brian and Lexi's place to crash for the night. Next morning, which would be yesterday as I'm recording this, we all were up and out the door at the event by 8. There was problem. They had they're trying to record everything that happened at the event so that they can put it up on the web. When they announce that it's up, I'll drop a link in the show notes. But they had one room that wasn't set up to record. I happened to bring my gear set up in there, and there's something wrong with my laptop because it just goes to sleep and shuts down after a short period of time, even though it shouldn't. So we only got part of the audio from that one room, which is depressing. And we may not, I haven't pulled the file up to check it to see if we got everything we needed or if it just, we lost everything. It was depressing for me because I really liked the speaker, and I saw one other speaker in that room, and who was also a really good speaker. So it's like, damn, I wish we could have gotten both of these, but we couldn't. So that's not anybody's fault. That's just the situation. So Mandisa Thomas was there. She gave a great opening speech. As usual, I've never heard her give a bad speech. The panel I attended, and let me just say that they did something that I really liked. I mean, we were in a Methodist church, which was a big-ass church. It was, I guess, about the size of the Unitarian church we had NanoCon at in Nashville. So it was a good-sized venue. But the nice thing that they did that NanoCon didn't do is NanoCon gave you like 5 minutes between sessions. So you'd go to one, it'd wrap up, and then you'd have to bail and run to find the next session. And that sometimes meant people were coming in late, or, because either they had trouble finding it or because, the previous talk they were watching went over. At Secular Saturday, there was 15 minutes between talks, so you had time to, find where you were going or go to the bathroom or do other things and still get there on time. And if the talk you were at ran over, It's okay. You weren't going to be late for the next one. So that's an absolute plus. The first, talk I went to was given by Christy Wilkinson. It's called Progressive Political Movements. She is the president of the Democratic Party for Hamilton County, which is where Chattanooga is. So she gave a great talk. She discussed her experiences running for statewide office, the issues that the party has in Tennessee. I found out that Tennessee has the Tennessee has the lowest voter turnout in the country. That's how bad things are here. We also have the lowest average wages. There's a whole lot of downside in this area, it turns out. But she discussed about things they're doing to organize, what kind of issues they're planning on tackling, related stuff like that. Now, I managed to have a really good talk with her afterwards, since I work with the local, the Sumner County, where I live, Democratic Party. I wanted to, talk with her to get some of her ideas of what they're doing and let her know what we're doing, since that's not always directly communicated to one another. So, and I'm going to try and get at the next Democratic meeting, if the local county president's there, I'm going to talk to him and see, let him know about things and see if I can't get those two working a little closer together, because we've got to shift this state. Or we're going to blow things. So that was, like I said, that was a really good talk that she gave. Now, and then after that, it was lunch, which, I'll be honest, was better than the first lunch we had at NanoCon. The first lunch at NanoCon, the lunch at the first NanoCon, I should say, I speak English, was potluck. So it was kind of eclectic, and it was enjoyable, but the second year, this year, when they had the food truck show up, that was much better. I'm sure that everybody involved preferred that, because they didn't have to do, think about bringing a dish and deal with all that hassle. You could just show up, go to the food truck, and enjoy it. And then the talk I saw after that, and there were multiple talks going on at one time. Like the first set of talks was an interfaith panel, one on supporting loved ones through deconversion, one on atheists in foxholes, and one that one that the guy had to cancel at the last minute because his job told him, we've had an emergency, so you've got to come in or you don't have a job. And then the second hour of talks, they had the first podcasting panel, which I wasn't on. They had a gentleman doing a panel on the importance of interfaith dialogue. And they had Jen from Not Another Atheist podcast doing atheists and politics. So, after lunch, I went to a talk on authoritarianism. There was at that time there was a mindfulness going on at the same time. There was a mindfulness and meditation talk. There was a craft your flow talk, which is about flow in the sense of when you're doing something and getting into the mode where you can actually be hugely productive. And there was a talk called God Values the Power of What you do believe. Now, the authoritarianism talk was really good. The guy who gave it he's a professor at UT Chattanooga working on his second doctorate. He's I forget his exact field, but he's a psychologist, not a clinical psychologist. He's a research psychologist. And the gist of his talk was that all of us have the seeds of becoming an authoritarian in us. It's environmental factors combined with certain things that determine how much of an authoritarian we become. His argument was that some people are naturally, I'll use the non-clinical term, high-strung. So they're always kind of worried about the world around them, and other people are calm and relaxed. You have an event like, say, 9/11. Well, everybody starts getting their switches flipped, and they become, authoritarians. And then once the initial shock of the crisis settles down or the crisis is over, people drop back to their normal levels in most cases. And he was discussing the evolutionary origins of that. And it's a mechanism, according to his theory, that you flip switch, these are done to protect the group. So you're in a primitive society, hunter-gatherer type, and you encounter another group. Well, if that group is hostile, because let's say they've ran out of resources in their area and are moving into your area looking for more food or whatever, and you are just, hey, how you doing? Come on in. You could get wiped out. Whereas if you have a sense of distrust of that outside group, your group can become more cohesive and join together to defend yourselves if it turns out that other group is hostile. And if I'm not mistaken, he said that his next stage of research is trying to figure out how we can get around that. His argument was that we're, our higher order thinkings, like logic, rationality, are relatively recent introductions into the species. And so they haven't fully developed and they haven't fully taken over when they should. So his argument is that, while we have a need for an immediate response to what we perceive as a threat, we more importantly now, as we are becoming more and more civilized, we need to be able to sit back and see if something really is a threat before responding to it. And I'm sure you're all sick of hearing me talk about this, but I asked him, I said, in the Q&A section, I said, have you read Eric Hoffer's The True Believer? And he's like, no, I haven't heard of it. And I was describing the book, and I said, one of the arguments Hoffer makes is that he says you have, a society that's polarized. So you've got, one set of extremists on one side and a different set of extremists on another side, and then the bulk of the population in the middle. And it is easier for the extremist group on, say, the left side to recruit members from the right, or the extremist group on the right to recruit members from the left, than it is for either group to recruit members from the center. And he said, yeah, that sounds about right, because the groups on either extreme are both wired up and triggered in the authoritarian mode. So you're just flipping a couple of switches to get them to move over to your position. Whereas the center, they don't have any switches flipped. So you've got to do a lot of work to get them moved to one side or the other. So that was interesting that a self-taught, my personal opinion, it was interesting that a self-taught sociologist like Eric Hoffer figured that out. He said he was going to check the book out and see what he thought about it. I don't know if he will or not. And it doesn't really matter, I suppose. But I hope he did. And I mentioned that to to Christy Wilkinson when I was talking to her afterwards, because I was like, you ought to read it as it is basically. I read, I explained to her I read that in October during the Trump campaign, and swear to God, it was the blueprint they used for their campaign. And I also told her about the My History Can Beat Up Your Politics podcast and the episode All Politics is Social, since that has a lot of good advice, in my opinion, on what the Democrats should do for the election. And it was so funny because when I mentioned the name of the podcast, she's like, I am writing that down now. I mean, and when I told the head of the Sumner County Democratic Party about that podcast, he just jumped down. He's like, gotta get that now. So that's pretty cool. And in theory, although I haven't heard from him, so I don't know if he's still going to do it, Bruce Carlson from My History Can Beat Up Your Politics should be a guest on the future episode. We'll have to see how it goes. It'll be probably a few days before I get a final confirmation and a time and things like that. And then the next session was the podcasting panel that I was on. I don't know if he was a student. He was connected somehow with the UT professor who gave the talk on authoritarianism. They were at least colleagues. I think one may have been I think the second gentleman may have been a student or of the first, but I could be wrong. He gave one on deplatforming from the left. This is one of the mistakes, and it was minor, that they had Jen from Not Another Atheist Podcast, who's on the same panel as I was. They had her also giving her own talk, and they canceled that and let her do that. And they did another one on supporting loved ones through deconversion. That was the second. That was the last panel. Now, this is so funny. So we're doing, well, it's funny now. It wasn't funny at the time. We're doing the podcasting panel. And, all of us do the basic intro and describe our shows and things like that. And we do a few things, and then we start taking questions. So this one guy in the audience sticks his hand up and asks a question. And he's like, I'm not an atheist. I'm a Christian, and I'm a Trump supporter, and I'm just here to check everything out. And I want to know why you guys hate Trump so much. My blood pressure shot through the fucking roof for some reason. I really do not know what it was about what he said that it got me just angry as shit. Chris was sitting there going, next to him was Zach, who was also, and Jen was kind of, twitchy, and I'm like, okay, I'm grabbing the mic and talking because I have experience, I have that former boss who used to work for Trump. So, and that was actually a good move on my part, although it could kind of seem as a dick move because I had forgotten that Jen's originally from New York. And so she has had dealings with some of the things Trump has done. She didn't have as close a tie to him as I do, but she knows well the kinds of things that he's done to the real estate market in New York City. So I get the mic and I start talking, and I'm forcing myself to be calm. I'm forcing myself to give as best an objective discussion of the thing as I can. And I'm shaking. I'm so angry, but I'm doing what I can. And I can see a lot of people out there in the audience nodding with what I'm saying, so I'm not making a huge ass out of myself. And then, they're like, okay, we're getting kind of, we're over our time, so you need to shut the fuck up, Tucker. Which I was like, oh, God, And then Jen grabs the mic and she gives her spiel about, what Trump has done to New York, where, they buy up all these buildings cheap, let them get run down, then flatten them and build up these multi-million-dollar apartment buildings that nobody could afford to live in. And then, or was it before Jen spoke? Doesn't really matter. I think it was before Jen spoke, but anyways, the guy who asked the question said, "Hey, I was just joking. I thought you guys would get that I was making a joke." I was like, oh my God, dude played us well. I mean, cause I was wound up. So we finished the panel, everybody goes out, and it's like, I just gotta, I go outside and I'm just chain smoking cigarettes trying to calm myself down. And I wasn't mad at dude for pulling the joke on us. It was just I had to get calmed down from the stress. And, I don't know why it got me so riled up. And afterwards, Zach and Chris and Jen and I were talking. Zach and Chris, at the beginning, were like, I think this is a joke, but I'm not sure. He seems serious. So they were, they were taken in as well, and Jen was taken in. So it was, it wasn't just me that was fooled. It was everybody. And, I missed the last set of talks because I just had to fucking decompress. I wanted to see Bobby speak, Bobby C from No Religion Required, because he was there along with Miss Ashley, which was nice because I hadn't seen them since ReasonCon, and it was a lot of fun. And at one point, while we were outside smoking between one of the sessions, Bobby and Lexi were talking and, strategizing how to plan next year's Secular Saturday. So it's like, wow, they're really on the ball. And I mean, thanks to Bobby and Gene, who does ReasonCon, and Chris and the others who were involved in NanoCon, those three events, at the very least, are all going to be getting much, much bigger and better in the near future. That's because I know that they're all working on a way to cross-promote everything. Bobby had some really good advice, and he's like, this is what Gene learned. I really have to say that the future strategy of all these things is just going to be amazing, because they're going to be able to cross-pollinate ideas with one another now. So, this group can say, we tried this, it didn't work very well. This other group can say, hey, we did this thing and it turned out incredible. So I am really optimistic that NanoCon, ReasonCon, and Secular Saturday, as good as they have been, and I have no complaints about any of those events, are going to be so much better. I've always been jealous in the past because when I listened to Penn's Sunday School podcast, he talks about the event, and I don't know if they still do it or not, but the event that James Randi has in Vegas, and all these different speakers and all that. And it's like, God, I wish I could go to that. I can't, forget the ticket cost, which I can't afford. I couldn't even afford to go out in that area and hang out with him, because Penn always has this after party at some place, and, it's the bacon and donuts thing. And that always sounds incredible, but I have no way of, I couldn't afford to get out to Vegas just to go to that, let alone go to, Randy's stuff. So it looks like in a very short period of time, we're going to have something on the East Coast that is, several things on the East Coast that is going to be as good as some of the stuff you hear about on the West Coast or in the western part of the U.S. or like what they have in New York. Nexus, I think is what it's called. I don't remember. It's, can't afford to go, so I don't pay too much attention to it. But that'll be really nice for those of us who have, limited resources and can't travel very far. And then after they did the closing, we did an informal dinner at a place in Chattanooga called Southside Social, which is located in a, it's in an industrial district that's being revitalized. They had, the place was really neat. They had good food. It was cheap. The one downside, and it was just, this is a me thing, it's not a smack on the restaurant at all, was that, after like 7 or 8 o'clock, I think it was. I don't remember exactly when it was. They had a DJ playing music, and I was just still so jarred from being there, from secular Saturday that it's like, I can't take this loud music. It's just not what I need right now. I need some calm things. So that, again, that's me. That's not on the DJ or his choice of music. I mean, I listened to the shit that he was playing all the time when I listened to music. It wasn't anything that I didn't like. It's just not what I needed at that time. And again, that's me. That's not anybody else. So we did that. And I don't, and not all of us went there who were at Secular Saturday. I know Bobby C., Miss Ashley, Zach, and a few others went somewhere else. I never heard where they went. And I don't know where Brian and Lexi went or, some of the other people that I know went. So we had but we had a nice time, and then we went back to Brian and Lexi's, and well, we were up till sometime after 2 o'clock in the morning, which my biological rhythm was, since I'm on Central Time and they're on Eastern Time in Chattanooga, it was only 1 a.m. to me, but it was like 1 or 3 or something. It was like 3, I think, when we all finally started drifting off. So we had a good time there, and then we got up this morning, and Chris and I headed back here, and I have to say, for those of you who are wondering, yes, the cat sitter did an awesome job, and I really have to thank her. She lost the key that I had given her to the trailer. And she told me beforehand, she says, I may have lost the key. And it's like, okay. She goes, I think I know where it is. I think I've got it, but I won't know until I can get over to your place to try it. And she wasn't able to get over here before I had to leave. So that's nobody's fault. And I wasn't really worried about Buttons and Fuzznuts because they had plenty of water and dry food inside the house. It's the feral cats outside that I feed because, I'm just a sap for kitties. And actually, one of the cats isn't really feral. He was mine until an ex of mine moved in, and then he decided he didn't want to live here anymore, and so he stays outside all the time. He was a smarter cat than I am. But so she, she's like, what do I, she goes, if I can't get in, what do I do? And I says, well, don't worry about the inside ones. They're actually pretty good. I mean, Fuzznuts and Buttons didn't get their can of wet food like they like, but, I says, just give, buy something and put it out for the outside cats, and that's fine. And she not only did that, but she made sure that they had plenty of water, which is good because the outside, I mean, there's places where they can get water, but it was 100 and I don't know what the weather was like here yesterday, but it was 101 in Chattanooga, so it was probably the same here, and that's not the heat index, that was the actual temperature. And today, I know it either hit 100 or got real close without the heat index. With the heat index, like I said, it was over 100, it was 104 or more. That happened to be the time, the 104 happened to be just at the time when I looked at the app on my phone. I hadn't looked at it before that, so I didn't know how hot it was during the day. So, that's good because the outside kitties need water, and she made sure they had plenty. So I was really grateful to her for that. When I got home, I sent her a text message thanking her because, if she'd have just left the food, I would have been fine with it, but she made sure they had water, which is, more than I expected. And, she bought cat food, and I said, do you want me to pay you for the bag of cat food that you bought and gave them? She's like, no, don't worry about it. So you can't beat that. You really can't. And I will say, somehow I'm going to have to figure out a way when I go out of town that I can bring these two with me, because I really did miss them. I really did. I know that Buttons I don't know about, but I know Fuzznuts doesn't like being in a car, but damn, I miss them. And even though they weren't particularly thrilled with me when I got home, they didn't come running to greet me at the door, though they did get up out of my bed and just stare at me like, how's it going? Where you been, asshole? But I do miss the little fluff balls. And I don't like leaving them. Not because I'm worried that my friend won't take care of them, but just because I miss them. I guess that makes me a sap. Anything else? Yeah, one thing, now that I think about it, I will say is that the internet is both a blessing and a curse. Because if it weren't for the internet, I wouldn't have met all these wonderful people. And I wouldn't have been able to hang out with Brian and Lexi and all the others and have such a good time this weekend. And now that I'm not there, it's like, fuck, I want to hang out with them more. Yeah. Seriously, while I was there, it's like, wow, we are all having such a good time. I would love to be able to move here just to hang out with them because, they're cool people. It would be nice to have people like this around me, and not just atheists in general, but those specific people. But I can't. And if it weren't for the internet, I would have never met them. I wouldn't have this, oh God, I want to hang out with them all the time. And it just makes me think of the folks who have somewhat jokingly suggested we should start an atheist town. Now, of course, in the past, whenever anybody started a town focused on a single thing, like Henry Ford in the 30s started a city in Latin America because he wanted his rubber plantations to be a model of how civilization should be. But of course, he put all these weird restrictions on people. I think he banned alcohol. He may have banned dancing. He banned stuff that today we're like, wow, what a nut job. So, of course, it didn't survive very long. And then the founder of Domino's now has this city in Florida. Where else, really? That is, for Catholics. And the rules are, no place in the city can sell birth control or pornography. I guess you're allowed all the alcohol you want. I don't know how it's doing. Ought to look that up. Well, according to the Google machine, they're still in development and it hasn't fully been realized yet. But again, every one of those places has fallen apart because, that people think, oh, we'll live there with this, specific mindset. And then they realize that after they start the place, they're all hemmed in by their rigid ideology. Now, in theory, if the only rule you had to follow to live in the community was that you had to be an atheist, this would work better than the others because you wouldn't be required to, pray at certain times of day or abstain from alcohol or sex or whatever. Shakers were really big into keeping people from having sex, literally. I mean, that was one of the tenets of their doctrine, was that you're not allowed to have sex. They've basically died out by now, so see how well that worked. But, you know, considering the fact that there's all these people crying, "Oh, atheism is dying, the movement's tearing itself to pieces," we'd still have issues. You know, because somebody would be upset because somebody didn't hold the same political beliefs or supported a different candidate or dyed their hair a different color, whatever. So there would be conflicts, there would be things like that. But still, it would be so nice to just have a place where we all lived and we're all close to one another. I mean, it's about 2 hours from here to Chattanooga. So I could, if I had a car, hop into it and drive down and hang out with Lexi and them for Lexi and Brian and them, a few others, for, you know, a weekend or something like that. But then, you know, it's like, man, I gotta drive back. I gotta get somebody to watch the cats because I can't bring them with me because Brian and Lexi can't have pets where they live. So, you know, those two would have to stay. And it's just like, man, it's so hard. And, you know, I know Chris is doing things to try and, you know, build up the atheist community here in the area and get everybody socializing, but it's still not enough. And, you know, I'm sitting there on, you know, Brian and Lexi's couch, and we're talking about music and things like this. And, you know, I'm learning from them. I'm assuming they're learning stuff from me. And, you know, it was a great time, but we can't do it because all the time because they live in, you know, Chattanooga. I know one of the people who stayed there lives in Florida, who was a really cool dude, Tim. The other people who were there visiting, I'm not sure where they're from. Oh, I just checked. They're from Cincinnati, which is about a 4-hour drive. I mean, if I went and saw them, I could hang with them. I could hang with Callie, Celeste, and a bunch of others. But it'd be just so nice if everybody was closer together. Because, you know, I know them. I know what their interests are. I know where ours overlap and things like that. Then again, maybe it's better that we are so far apart so that we don't realize, God, this other person's an asshole. I don't want anything to do with them. Or we get on each other's nerves. I don't know. But still, it's what I long for. So that is going to be that for this bonus episode. And Patreon supporters, you're not being dinged for this. I promise you. I got to thank everybody involved. You know, Chris for giving me the ride down there. Brian and Lexi for putting up with us. All the organizers of Secular Saturday. Everybody who came and showed up and saw all the talks. And, you know, I just can't say enough how much fun I had. In some ways, I had more fun there than I did at ReasonCon or NanoCon. And that's not a slight against either of those other events. That's just, it happened. Maybe it's just because I was able, you know, I was seeing Bobby and Miss Ashley and Brian and Lexi and Zach and Hugh Mann and a few others that I hadn't seen in a while or, you know, don't get to see as often as I would like. So, but it was great. When they have theirs next year, when they announce the dates for next year's, I'll let everybody know. And I urge you to go. And if you're not in the area, but there's an event like this in your area, go. Absolutely go. You will not regret it. It is a really good way to recharge your batteries and feel much better. So, and this weekend will be a news episode. So I'll see you all then.
That's it for this episode of The Atheist in the Trailer Park Podcast. You can subscribe to the show on iTunes, Stitcher, as well as just about anywhere else podcasts can be found. Many of the episodes are also on YouTube. Follow the show on Twitter at tparkatheist is the show's Twitter handle. It's on Facebook at facebook.com/trailerparkatheist.com. If you happen to like the podcast, please rate it on iTunes. If you'd like to support the podcast, there's a donate button on the show notes page. You can support it via Patreon at patreon.com/TNTucker. Thanks for listening.
Say goodnight, Fuzz-Nuts.
All I know is this violates every canon of respectable broadcasting.
Damned cat.